Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wine, Women, and Words. I am Michelle, and with me, of course, is Diana.
Hello.
And I think I see Lilo there as well, but
Yeah.
no one else does since this is audio only. Um, we are here tonight to talk about Witch of Wild Things with, of course, author Raquel Vasquez Gilliland. Thank you so much for making time for us and coming to hang out. And we're very happy to have you here.
I'm so excited to be here. Podcasts are some of my favorite things to do as far as promotional stuff for book things. So, especially because you can wear your pajamas.
Yes, I think that should just we should just incorporate that in all of our emails from now on. Like pajamas are welcome. Come comfy
Yeah.
It's kind
because
of a
we
nice
always come
pajama
comfy.
party.
I think that's really the vibe that we go for
Mhm.
is just, like a giant nerd session. So, of course, we are here, as I mentioned, to talk about Witch of Wild Things. And for our listeners who may not yet be familiar with it, can you give us an overview of the story?
Yeah. So, um, Sage Flores was born in a family in which the women are born with gifts, or like they're kind of like magical powers. And Sage's power is communicating with plants, making them grow and a lot of other things. And so in the beginning of the book, she's returning to her hometown, which she's been avoiding due to trauma, specifically the trauma of losing her youngest sister. And she does not want to be there. She doesn't want to face people. She just wants to have a place to live, save up some money, and take off again. But of course, in order to get the book, you have to make the character face what they don't want to face. So she sticks around longer than she intends to, especially when she's partnered up with Tennessee, who is her sort of high school sweetheart, sort of. And sparks begin to fly because he's so much hotter than she remembered. And trying to think if I'm leaving anything out. Oh, she's haunted by her youngest sister, Sky. So there's that too. There's a paranormal element to it.
So after a bit of light stalking, I understand you also enjoy plants as well. And when I say light stalking, I really do mean it in the best sense of the word. Um, checking out your
It's all
socials and your
research and
website.
preparation.
I swear to God, we're not creepers. I swear.
No.
Oh, no.
But I love that Sage can actually communicate with the plants. And I honestly feel like that's like the ultimate gardening thing. And if I could have that power, I feel like then I wouldn't be such a black thumb and I could actually grow things. Now, I understand you do enjoy gardening as well. Is that did you how is that putting that love of that thing that you do into the book itself? And I hopefully did not butcher that question.
I oh, I grew up with a family who was super into plants, so I think it sort of was an inheritance for me. And so all of my books feature plants. And this one does a lot because one of the settings is a plant company or a nursery. Um, so when I did the first draft of this book, the setting was like the professional setting was an architect firm. And it didn't really work for me because I don't really love architecture. I mean, I appreciate it, but it's not like a passion of mine. So when I rewrote the book, I decided to make um, everything in the book something that I really loved and was interested in and wanted to either research or um, just write about. And so that's kind of where the plant thing came from. So several years ago, I started educating myself on how to decolonize gardening, decolonize landscaping, and basically it turned into this really cool. I don't even know what to call it, like side quest. I teach classes on it now and give lectures, and I just did a op-ed in the New York Times on it. And so plants are very important to me. I love them, and I hope they love me back. So I hope that answers that.
And so you said decolonize
Mhm.
your gardening. Can we go into that a little bit? Because I understand like decolonize your um like a bookshelf, and decolonize is how about you, can you go into that more? Just in decolonizing your garden?
Yeah, so because we're raised assuming that we're all Western, raised in Western culture, we have been raised not necessarily explicitly, but probably explicitly in some ways, to view the natural world as like a machine that we have dominion over. And we can sort of trace this back to, like a Abrahamic creation myth and things like that. So to kind of decolonize that, the idea that when you look at a piece of land, it doesn't have its own autonomy. It's like, what can I build on it, or what can I extract from it? What can it serve me? Because for capitalism and the patriarchy and colonization, it's like all connected. So when I teach the classes on it, the first thing that I teach people is that the land is alive and it has preferences and a personality. It has consciousness, and you can communicate with it just like sage does. Although I hadn't written the book when I was teaching, so I couldn't say that. but you can, and so that's one part of this really huge topic of decolonizing. And it's not just like native plant gardening, although that's a big part of it. It's also um, honoring and respecting the land as its own uh, being, its own like spirit. So I didn't get into all that in the New York Times, but but I do talk about it more in my class.
So, and I do love that you called it like your side quest, because we all need those we all have those projects or those passions that start out, it could start out very simple, and all of a sudden you learn so much and you discover that you have a passion for something that I just love the idea of the side quest because that describes it perfectly.
Right, and I'm neurodivergent, so I have hyperfixations. So I feel like I have at any given time 10 of them at least. So and I love them. I love being surrounded by books and facts and things like that.
I am the neurodivergent as well, and hyperfixation I feel like is our superpower, because I feel with me, hyperfixating was what allows me to be able to write a book. That's where I'm able to like really channel myself and hyperfixate on this plot and this story. And when I started writing, my husband was like, I've never seen you so focused on anything at all in your life. And it was, I feel like, because of hyperfixation. And I don't know, maybe it's my personal opinion, but I feel like being neurodivergent is a very special thing, I think, and that's something to be looked down upon in general.
Yeah, I only I only learned about my neurodivergence like 3 months ago. So I'm kind of in the place where I'm like, my whole life is being explained to me and it actually makes sense. And but I completely agree with you. There's so much good in it. And I'm trying to focus on that because like up until you're diagnosed, at least for me, I don't know for everyone, but I kept thinking, what's wrong with me? Why don't I feel these things that other people feel? Why don't I know what to say in these certain contexts? And um, I actually kept asking my therapist, what's wrong with me? Like, why don't I experience the world the way everyone else seems to? And it's like, oh, this is why. So it's been really good and affirming. So
Mhm. I saw it recently. There was a meme that really explained it really well. That pre-diagnose, be pre, because I can't say my words well today. I swear to God, I am a writer. Before you're diagnosed with neurodivergent tendencies, you're facing the world as like in a game, and you're constantly being given these rules, and you're like, why can't I do this? Why do I keep failing? Why me? And then once you are diagnosed, then you're like, oh, now I know. And then it doesn't solve everything, but it's like, okay, now I know how to strategize for these rules and being able to make it through this game.
Right. It's been such a relief to know that I can prepare things differently and make it better for myself.
Mhm.
Still learning how to do that though.
Process. It really is. I think I was in my late 30s when I was officially diagnosed as ADHD, and I was from that generation where, coming up, girls didn't have ADHD. That wasn't a thing. That was a boys thing. It wasn't a girls thing. And it was like, no, you are. And it wasn't until maybe a year or two after that it was like able to really feel like I could function with this condition. I don't even want to call it a condition. It's just the way that I am. It's such a part of who we are and what makes us unique. And I swear we've talked to so many authors on this podcast over the years that and even especially in recent years, the subject of neurodivergency and utilizing those traits as part of our superpower to be able to write books has been there's so many creatives that I think are on that neurodivergent spectrum. I think that's what I think fuels so many of the creatives, because they're all so great because we see the world in such a different way than a normal or a normally person. I like to tease my husband because he's a normal thinking person, and I'm like, how do you function? I don't understand this. What, you don't have a constant like narration in your head all the time with random songs popping up randomly? What? How do you? This is not right.
Sorry, I got distracted. Michelle, did you want to say something? Because you undid the button. So I interrupt you,
Oh, no. Diana's audio kind of like, if I mute myself, it was like acting up a little bit, and I muted myself and it got better. And then I was like, oh, let me try unmuting myself. But I will ask about this. So this was your debut adult novel, and we always love, or I always love talking. Well, we both do. It's not just me. Talking to authors about how they approach writing. Transitioning between genres. So for you going from young adult to adult, was there any kind of change in how you approach the story, or what would you say the main differences are between the two genres for you?
So when I first wrote the first draft of Witch of Wild Things, I think I went into it, wanting to write an adult romance and thinking, okay, so since this is adult, it has to be like super serious with a capital S. It's going to be an architect firm because that sounds super fancy, and all these things that didn't really work out because it was coming from like this idea I had of adult romance rather than what I wanted to read as a reader. And so when I rewrote it, I kept writing, speaking of neurodivergence and the executive function. So for a long time, for a few weeks, I was like, I don't think I have issues with executive function. But then I have this enormous planner in which I write really long to-do lists that don't get done unless they're there, and it includes things like washing my hair and trimming my nails and getting the mail and things like that. So that was a revelation. But in this planner, or not this one, because I wrote the book 2 years ago, I would write, like, remember to have fun. Like, remember, this book is fun. Like, keep it fun. And fun for me is, in writing, is, you know, it can be heavy, like emotional wounds and intergenerational trauma. But that's part of my hyperfixations. And I get interested in seeing how characters can heal those things. Also, just on a practical level, when you write YA sex scenes, open door scenes, it's a little bit more vague because that's what's appropriate. When you write adult, you can get more explicit, you know, depending on the type of romance you're writing. So that's just a practical thing.
We're both muted. We're both waiting to see who unmutes first. Yeah, it is interesting, I think, how sometimes authors can get into that mindset of, oh, it has to be like, you know, I'm writing for grown-ups, so it has to be very serious. But it doesn't, you know, it doesn't have to be super serious, and you can still absolutely have fun with it. And my question just completely shot out of my mind. So Diana, help me out here. But I too, now that I told you to talk, I'm going to cut you off. I was going to say, I too have those to-do lists that include very basic things that I do on a regular basis, like make my bed. And sometimes if I need to get like a jolt of productivity or accomplishment, I'll add things that I've already done just to cross them off. So at least my list looks like it's like I'm doing something with my day.
Write a to-do list under the to-do list.
Ooh, I'm gonna start doing that one just to kick it off. Make list done. I like that. I'm stealing that. Okay, now you can go, Diana.
Oh, now I can go. I
Now
completely
you can
forgot
go.
what I was going to bring up. So, no, I just, for the longest time, to-do lists were always something, and you're talking to the book plotter here, where they overwhelm me. And actually, I had to work with my therapist on the to-do list and not get overwhelmed by them, because I felt like I put too much on there, and then I'd be like, oh my God, I can't do this. And what's wrong with me, kind of thing. So I have to keep them very, very, very simple. But going forward, we've got a couple questions that are becoming standard that we quite thoroughly love to discuss with other authors. And the subject came up, it's a couple months ago now, I believe, right, Michelle?
Yes.
The concept of the underwriter and the overwriter. For my first two books, I wrote biographies, historical fiction biographies on women, and I found myself to be an overwriter, where I had like constant amount of material that I had to throw it all in there and then weed it out. But then when I started writing my own stories based on not based on anybody specific, I found myself to be an underwriter. For you, Raquel, do you consider yourself to be an underwriter, or are you an overwriter with your books?
I think every book is a little different, but generally, I think my style is underwriting. My first book, Sia Martinez, sold. Or no, I got my agent when it was 40,000, only 40,000 words, and we made it to 70,000. You know, through all the revisions in between my agent and my editor. My second book, it needed very little revisions once I got it out. It was like the first draft is very similar to the final draft. And for Witch of Wild Things, the previous draft, the one that I deleted, the grown up one, extra grown up, it was overwritten, but I think it was overwritten because it wasn't working, and I was trying to add in words and make it better, and it wasn't. But when I wrote Witch of Wild Things, it was similar to Moon Witness, that um, the the first draft looks very similar to the final draft.
I know we have our other very super serious, like capital S, serious survey questions, but I have to say, I was looking at the other, your three other books, and I am so interested. I have to get this book, your Dirt and Honey, your retellings. I absolutely have to uh, get that book because I love folklore retellings, fairy tale retellings. Um, can you, I know, and we're not here to talk about that book, but can you talk a little bit about, just very briefly, putting those stories together and putting your spin on them and making that collection?
Yeah, so Dirt and Honey is my MFA thesis that got published
Oh,
by
okay.
a press called Green Writers Press. And it's been so long since I've talked about it. I'm like trying to find my copy somewhere. So it is very influenced, like you said, by folklore and fairy tale, and a lot of the retellings are through the lens of my Mexican American heritage. So it's kind of the whole thing. The whole thing sort of reads like its own fairy tale with little narrative poems and prose poems in the middle of it. And it was really exciting. It's my first like published book of the collection, and I'm trying to think what else. I think it's really cool that people are discovering my poetry through my novels. Like people will write me and say, "Hey, I picked up, Dirt and Honey, or my chapbook, Tales from the House of Vasquez," and I'm like, "Whoa, people are reading poetry and prose poems. That's really cool."
Poetry is so important, and I know I need to read it more, but it's really good for the writing because I talk to other poets and who are both poets and novelists, and they find that poetry does help with their writing process. Can you say the same about writing your poetry as well?
Yes, because so I got my master's degree in poetry. Prior to that, I queried two novels and got like a, almost 200 rejections. The work just wasn't, I didn't know how to marry a plot with my lyrical writing style. So then after I got my MFA, like literally like 2 months after graduating, I started writing C.M. Martinez. And I just the difference between before studying poetry and reading nothing but poetry for 4 years and then after was really illuminating. It's like I wrote that book as though it were a poem in a lot of ways. Like there's a lot of chapters that are only 1 line long or 2 lines long. And if you read Dirt and Honey and C.M. Martinez, I think you'll see a lot of overlap in the form. So.
I think Diana and I were just having this conversation maybe a week or so ago, how you're always, or maybe it was longer than that, I don't remember, but we're always evolving as writers, and you learn something from each book that you write. You learn a little bit more about your style as a writer, or you change something or add something. And then also from the books that you read, everything that you read influences your writing in some way, that maybe you don't even realize it, or maybe it's a conscious thing. But every book that you write, you definitely, and I say this like I've published 20 books, but what I've learned from other authors is you're constantly evolving and constantly learning from your own craft while you work, says the unpublished author.
No, I think that's true. I think you can say that at any point in your writing career, published or not. I mean, I started way more novels that didn't get finished. Then I wrote the two prior to C. Martinez. And the difference just between those two, even though they weren't ready to be published, and I'm really glad in retrospect they weren't, because they were kind of embarrassing, like just the craft wasn't there. But the difference between those first two, I still have them, is crazy. Like I went, I don't even know what metaphor I want to use, but it's like going from I don't know, like store-bought cookies to creme brulee, like like levels of um, knowledge and experience. So yeah, I can see that, and everything does influence my work. I see that as well.
And now we have our super serious, like very serious scientific survey that Diana can explain.
Oh, I get to explain. Okay.
You're so
Yeah,
good at
as
it.
Michelle said, oh, thank you. Thank you. Michelle said it's super, super serious. So we found I am, as I mentioned earlier, I am very much a plotter. I like to plot out my books, have this path that I can take. It's like I consider it a roadmap. I need to go, need to know how to get to the 7-Eleven, and if I'm gonna go divert myself, I need to be able to know how to get back to the 7-Eleven. And on the flip side of things, I am also open to chaos. I don't mind chaos in the world. I am perfectly okay with change. That stuff doesn't scare me at all. Michelle, on the other hand, when she sits down at the computer, whatever her characters tell her is going to happen is what's going to happen. It's just as much of a surprise to her as it is to her book. But also on the flip side, she likes to be very nice and neat and orderly. She likes to have the proper pens and color coordinated everything. And so now the question to you is, are you the kind of person, do you like to plot, or are you a pantser like Michelle? And also on the flip side, are you okay with chaos, or do you like to have things nice and neat and orderly?
It's definitely more plotting, just because I love writing books and seeing what comes, but I really hate revising. It's like my worst enemy. And I've noticed that when I pants a book, I have way more to revise. And when I plot a book, there's usually way less. So I go into it plotting things, and I'll write some character outlines, and then plot the beats of the story. Sometimes I'll spend months doing that before starting writing, and that's just a testament to how much I hate revising. I plan these things just so I don't have to revise. Like, so it doesn't always work that way. Sometimes I still have to revise a lot, but it's kind of like, please, I don't want to revise. I just want to plan. I'd rather plan than revise. Also, my favorite part of the writing process is drafting, which I guess makes sense if I don't like revision. I love to draft. And to me, planning is kind of like extending the drafting process, and I have a lot of fun with it. So
interesting. You don't hear that many people say that they love the drafting process.
I know, and I feel so weird because when I do panels with authors, they're like, "Oh my gosh, I love revising." That's when things, get pulled together, and you can see, the shining diamond coming out of the rough. And I'm like, no, it's worst. Like, drafting is what I love, drafting. So I don't know why. Maybe because I get fixated on it. Whereas revision, it's more like my mind is being pulled in different directions. So
Interesting. Well, it's Terry Pratchett had said something to the effect of that first draft, you are telling yourself the story. And I think in light of what you said, that makes perfect sense. Where while we're fixating on the story, we're telling ourselves a story, and we get to, we're telling it to ourselves.
Yeah, I like that. That just makes sense to me. And I do, my mantra for Moon Fuentes was write what you want to read. And I'm like, I want to read a book about a curvy teenager who gets the hot guy. So
Oh dear, I don't know.
And now, are you somebody who?
Sorry, you talk. I think my internet is weird, and I'm getting a lag, so I don't know if you guys can hear me or not. So I'm just gonna sit here and listen.
you look and sound perfect to me.
Okay.
Oh, really? Okay. Oh, weird. Okay, you go, Diana.
Okay. So now on the other side of the question, are you like me where you are okay with some chaos, or do you like to have things nice and neat and orderly like Michelle?
So for that, do you mean just the prose itself or the characters deciding?
Or just life in general? Just, are
Just
you
life.
okay with life in general?
I'm no. Well, no, I'm autistic. So I like things to be where they go. I like my schedule. I don't like change. So and it's funny because I dress like I dress very bohemian and people think, oh, she's the cool, relaxed. No, I'm not. Like I want things to go to plan. That's probably also another reason why I like planning my books and outlining them. That said, I'm a mom, and when you're a mom, many things do not go to plan, and so I've learned, to appreciate chaos, the chaos of being a mom. So.
Well, I think. Oh, can you hear me? Oh, okay,
yes,
there. Okay, well, I know we always say roughly half an hour because sometimes we have too much fun and we go over it, but we've definitely kept you longer than 30 minutes. But Witch of Wild Things is out in the world. If I'm remembering correctly, it came out on September 12th. Is that right?
Yes, that's September 12th.
So it is out in the world now. And if you would like your own copy, you can always click on the link in our show notes to our bookshop on bookshop.org. As always, bookshop.org supports our incredible writers. It supports the podcast, but most importantly, it supports all of the wonderful indie bookstores out there. And Raquel, thank you so much for hanging out with us and letting us nerd out with you about books and writing and all things books and writing.
Thank
We've
you
had
for
so
having
much fun
me.
chatting with you.
Same, I've had a lot of fun. I love hanging out in my pajamas and talking about books. Yes.
Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your evening.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.